Disney movies were most of our first experiences with fairy tales, and when it comes to their princess stories, we know they can sometimes be formulaic, which isn't a bad thing. Who doesn't love a happily ever after, right? We love rooting for the princesses to escape their evil stepmothers and be happy. But what if we told you the original stories from which Disney was inspired were actually not so happy? We've got a list of some pretty messed up origin stories. Before we dive in, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the latest Screen Rant videos. And can you guess what feature film these emojis are showing? Find out at the end of the video.
Do you even hear yourself? Why would you ask such a ridiculous question? It was you!
Rapunzel. You probably associated Rapunzel's story with Disney's Tangled, which tells the story of a beautiful princess with long blonde hair that has magical qualities and lives locked in a tower, courtesy of Mother Gothel, who kidnapped her as a baby. She meets a bandit who she escapes with, they have some adventures, fall in love, and end up living happily ever after. But the original story is a lot different. Rapunzel's parents were farmers who basically stole Gothel's plant for a salad. When they were caught, her father agreed that in exchange they would give up his child when his wife gave birth. She was named Rapunzel after the plant, and when she was 12, Gothel locked her in a tower, and the only way to get to her was by climbing her long hair. A prince strolls by and hears her singing. He sneaks up one day. After a brief introduction and a proposal, she decides to marry him. But Rapunzel is caught, gets her hair chopped off, and is banished to the desert. When the prince returns for her, he finds Gothel instead. She throws him out the window, and he ends up with thorns in his eyes and blinded. He roams around and eventually finds Rapunzel, who now has twins. Her tears give him back his sight, and they return to his kingdom. Wow, must have been a really good salad. The Little Mermaid. In Disney's version of The Little Mermaid, we meet the spunky redhead Ariel, who dreams of being part of the surface world. She falls in love with a human, Prince Eric, and does everything in her 16-year-old power to be with him, because love. She seeks out the sea witch Ursula and exchanges her voice for some legs so that she can go use her charms and dingle hoppers to make Eric fall for her. Ursula ends up playing some shady games, but don't worry. True love conquered all, and they defeated her with a boat. Right in the gut. Poor unfortunate soul. Prince Eric and Ariel lived happily ever after, complete with a sweet wedding and awesome rainbow. But in the original Hans Christian Andersen version, the outcome isn't so solid. Part of the agreement is that her legs will feel as if she were walking on broken glass. Sad, right? Well, Eric ends up marrying someone else, and Ariel throws herself in the ocean and becomes sea foam. Are you upset? Because we can't even right now. Ariel's crying face is sad enough. Can you imagine her turning into sad sea foam?
This one. Oh, very nice. Nice. Like it. Who can do it?
Cinderella. The classic rags to riches story about a young girl forced into servitude by her evil stepmother is one that Disney turned into a wonderful classic. Cinderella sings about dreams, love, and maintains a positive attitude through most of the abuse. Her only friends are cute birds, inventive mice, and an adorable dog. It doesn't seem all that bad with her little bird friends helping her get dressed in the morning. And after she meets her fairy godmother, things get better as she attends the ball with some fabulous yet impractical shoes. We're not here to judge. Anyway, we all know how it ends. She loses the shoe, Prince goes on a search, finds her, marries her, and they live happily ever after. But the Brothers Grimm did not tell the story as adorably. In this version, one of her stepsisters ends up with her toes cut off, and the other saws off her heels so that she can fit into the tiny glass slipper. Little doves alert the prince that there is blood on the shoe and discovers that Cinderella is the true owner. Once they realize Cinderella is to be queen, they try to win her favor and attend her wedding, only to have their eyes pecked out by birds. Pretty gruesome, don't you think?
Well, of course. You said so yourself. Once upon a dream.
Sleeping Beauty. Disney's Sleeping Beauty is one of the most beautifully animated films. It also has one of the sweetest ballads ever. Once Upon a Dream will forever be associated with romantic waltzing in the forest. The swoon-worthy Prince Philip can dance, is dedicated, determined, and willing to go up against a massive dragon just to prove his love and be with Briar Rose, aka Princess Aurora. Again, we have adorable woodland creatures, magic, and happily ever afters. And of course, the duel between pink and blue. But the original tale of Sleeping Beauty is much more horrifying. A king wanders by Sleeping Beauty's castle, and when no one answers his knocks, he climbs through the window. Here, he finds a beautiful and unconscious princess. So naturally, the creep decides to violate her and leaves. She only wakes up after giving birth to twins. She makes her way to the palace and they fall in love. That wasn't cringy enough, he is married to someone else already. She tries to have one of the twins killed and burn the princess at the stake. Luckily, she fails. The king and princess get married and live happily ever after. And to that, we say no thank you.
People use their imagination.
Belle, it's about time you got your head out of those books and paid attention to more important things.
Beauty and the Beast. Disney's Beauty and the Beast resonated with audiences not just because it's a tale as old as time, but because it's a beautiful love story that transcends appearances and prejudice. We love how Belle loves to read and stays true to herself even when her town makes fun of her for being weird. And who doesn't love the character arc that Beast goes through? So endearing, right? Belle and Beast both grow as people and learn from one another, but most importantly, it gave us major envy of that gifted library that Belle gets. And let's not forget the beautiful animation in the film. The original story by Gabrielle Suzanne Barbeau de Villeneuve is followed pretty accurately by Disney, except with a few changes. Belle actually has two evil sisters, as per usual when it comes to these things. Beast actually allows Belle to travel home and visit her family, as long as she promises to only be gone for a week. But when she shows up with some pretty nice threads, her sisters become jealous and convince her to stay longer, with the hopes that it will drive the Beast mad and he will devour Belle. Don't worry, Belle makes it out safe and sound. Snow White. Disney's first animated feature film is the 1937 film Snow White. Snow White was known for being the fairest in the land, so much so in fact that her evil stepmother wanted her dead. Families are pretty dark in these stories, aren't they? Even when they're Disney-fied. But what if we told you that the original Brothers Grimm tale wasn't full of cute furry animals that helped you clean? Or adorable dwarves? We know it's hard to imagine any other version, but in the original story, the queen is even more twisted. She asks the huntsman to kill her and bring her back her lungs and liver, but instead he brings back a boar's organs. She eats them, thinking they're Snow White's. Gross much? When Snow is placed in a glass coffin after being poisoned, a handsome prince passed by and fell in love. So of course, he asked to take her away and give her a proper funeral, which is pretty odd if you ask us. But thanks to this gesture, the people carrying her coffin trip, causing the apple to dislodge from Snow's throat. She then marries the prince and lives happily ever after. The evil queen is invited to the wedding, where she is forced to wear burning hot iron shoes and dance until she dies.
There's so much we can teach you. We've improved the lives of savages all over the world.
Savages?
Pocahontas. One of the great Disney films of the 90s is Pocahontas. Like any good Disney cartoon, there is a beautiful young lady who falls in love with a handsome stranger. Pocahontas is the chief's daughter, who is in touch with the beauty of nature. Her best friend is a raccoon, and she gets guidance from a tree. Her love for the Englishman John Smith almost starts a war between two peoples. But if you look once more around the river bend, you'll realize that this film is historically inaccurate. Pocahontas was actually a nickname, meaning playful one. Her real name was Matoaka. When the English arrived in Jamestown, Pocahontas was about 11 years old. John Smith was captured by Powhatan's brother, and according to Smith, his head was about to be smashed when Pocahontas rushed in and saved him. A couple years later, she was captured and held for ransom. She was violated and consequently impregnated. She was forced to convert to Christianity and was married off to John Rolfe to legitimize her pregnancy. She was a captive who wanted to help and protect her people. She lived a very short life and died at the age of 21. The details of how it all went down are not fully certain, but it was definitely not a happy ending for her.
Look, this tattoo will protect me from harm.
Mulan. Disney's Mulan was a story of a young woman who took her father's place in the war. Her selfless act and bravery led them to win the war and save all of China. Now, we know Mulan technically isn't a princess, but come on, she saved China and was totally selfless. That's pretty much royalty in our book. She was also friends with the talking little dragon. The story of Mulan came about because China was suffering an invasion during the 4th and 5th centuries. Warriors needed a source of hope, and Mulan became that inspiration. Her story is described in a poem, the Ballad of Hua Mulan. There's no proof that she was a real person, but her heroic actions inspired many. The legend of Mulan has been written with many variations, but the plot remains the same. She heard the army was recruiting, and in order to save her ailing father, she disguised herself and took his place. She fought for 12 years, gained high merit, but refused any reward. She only wished to return home. Many variations state that when she returned home, she discovered her father had passed away and was haunted by experiences in the battlefield. So she decided to take her own life. We enjoyed the liberties that Disney took by making it a little more joyous.
Waitress? Well, no wonder the kiss did not work. You lied to me.
I never said I was a
The Princess and the Frog. Perhaps Disney's last 2D animated film is the awesome story of The Princess and the Frog. It follows the story of a hard-working and ambitious young lady named Tiana, who dreams of one day opening the finest restaurant in New Orleans. It also follows an arrogant prince named Naveen, who gets turned into a frog by evil Dr. Facilier. Tiana's dreams get put on hold when her path crossed with Frog Prince Naveen. He mistakes her for a princess and plants a kiss on Tiana, except it doesn't work in either of their favors because she also gets turned into a frog. The two set off on an adventure to try and repair things. Along with a trumpet-playing alligator named Louise, a firefly named Ray, and a voodoo woman named Mama Odie, and their love for each other, they were able to return to their human selves. This whole movie is based very loosely on the Brothers Grimm story, The Frog Prince. The original version had the Frog Prince being thrown against the wall to break the spell. An even more violent version says that she has to cut the frog's head off. We'll definitely go with the smooch instead.
What did I ever do to you? Enough, Anna. No, why? Why do you shut me out? Why do you shut the world out? What are you so afraid of? I said enough!
Frozen. Frozen is a heartwarming story about true love and self-acceptance. It follows sisters Anna and Elsa as they rediscover their sisterly love for one another, and that they are two independent princesses who don't need no man. Just an adorable snowman. But despite all the goodness, there's little resemblance to the original fairy tale, The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen. In that story, there's a troll with a mirror that reflects the worst in a person who looks into it. It ends up shattering splinters and spreading out everywhere. One day, friends Kai and Gerda are out playing, and Kai ends up with a shard in his heart, which changes him for the worst. He ends up being lured away by the Snow Queen while on his sled, and Greta sets out on a quest to rescue him and thaw his frozen heart. Sound a bit familiar? Gerda finds out that the key to saving Kai is her sweet and innocent child heart. Much like Anna in Frozen, she arrives at the palace and finds Kai, assembling shards of ice to form the word eternity. If he succeeds, the Snow Queen will release him. Gerda kisses him and breaks the spell. As they dance around, the shards bounce around and spell eternity. They return home safe and sound. Wow, those are some messed up origin stories. What did you think? Are there any that we might have missed? Are there any that shocked you? Let us know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Screen Rant for more videos just like this one. But before we go, here is the answer to the emoji quiz. Did you get it? Let us know. Thanks for watching.